there a reason why we are being prevented from just starting our video?
Oh no. Juan, are you still there?
Well, just took care of it. Sorry, I forgot to check that, but yeah, it's all working now.
Thank
Wonderful,
you.
thank you.
This is why
Thank you,
we have Juan, among other reasons. Like, yeah, I think maybe the template. I wonder if the template is funky.
It is by design. And then it's just a check mark. And
Got it.
yeah, Kathy had it down in the instructions.
So Teresa, I wonder, I'm not going to remember, but maybe you will to let Gina know to check that box next time or uncheck it or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, I will. And it's also possibly something that I was supposed to do when I started this and just didn't. So
yeah. Oops. No, yeah, no. Thank goodness for one. And then just really quickly before we get started, those of you, so Juan, we should bring Michael over for sure. And then those of you who, and Amy as well. And then those of you who are presenting later, we will move you over as a panelist right before it's your turn to present, so that at that point you'll be able to unmute and turn on your camera and all of that. So, and I see Jackie's hand up. Okay. Jackie, I think you can unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say that both Amy and I will be presenting. So if you want to move somehow both of us over, that would be helpful.
Yes,
thanks.
We can definitely do that. And then Susan, I see you on there. I'll allow you to talk too. Do you have somebody else come in with you, or are you doing the presentation?
I'm doing the presentation, and I have Stephen Remington here.
Okay.
Stephen is our development director. And
great.
So do you want me to go ahead and promote him now, Lynn, or
yeah, that's
until,
fine.
yeah?
So let's do Jackie, both Amy's, Susan. I think that should cover it for now. And then there will be one more person who's going to need to get moved over when she shows up, and that's Colleen Sinsky.
Perfect.
And those of you who are getting moved over, please just do a really good job of muting yourself until it's your turn.
Kathy, have you heard from, or rather, Lynn, have you heard from Kathy Austin?
She should be attending.
Because if my count is accurate, we have 4 out, and I'm not sure we have quorum.
Yeah, and we
Kathy.
should probably hold until Kathy shows up.
My understanding, I have that many fingers. Without Kathy, we don't have quorum.
Correct. And if anybody else is trying to do that math, it's because we have 1 vacant seat, and that counts towards our quorum requirements. So sorry, hold tight. This is the challenge with summer in Oregon, right?
What do you mean? The weather's horrible outside. Nobody wants to be there.
I know. So for some of us, that's true. Honestly, I'm like, oh, it's so hot.
I think I've grown roots into this chair, into this room over the past 18 months.
Well, since we're holding, and I got on a minute or so after the news, Matt, congratulations to you and your whole family.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I hope I don't look like too much of a zombie, but I did get like 3 hours of sleep last night, so that was awesome.
I remember when that felt like such a win.
Yeah.
3 solid hours. Yay.
I passed out in the rocking chair in the nursery, rocking her last night. My wife came and shook me like at 2 in the morning, and she's like, how long have you been asleep? I'm like, I don't know. I guess like 20 minutes. And then my alarm went off at 5 and I had to get up for work. So it's nightly.
Oh yeah, all the fun. Okay, well, I'm gonna mute myself and take myself off camera and try to call Kathy really quick and just see if she is on.
I'm already dialing, actually.
Rachel, this is Susan. Hi. You have our presentations, correct? So you'll be putting those up? Thank you. Just checking.
All right, I just chatted with Kathy and she is going to be dialing in on the phone. So whoever is looking at the incoming attendees, if you keep an eye out for that, she'll be dialing in from the link from the email in about
Thank you.
4 minutes.
Thanks so much. All right, hold tight, everybody. Carry on with your multitasking. We'll get started in a moment. Sorry about that. Just to fill the time, since there are so many business transitions over the last 18 months, and I basically didn't leave the house for a solid year. Has anyone visited any new businesses that you would recommend in town? Just curious, restaurants, whatever. Nobody gets out, it's not just me, okay.
I noticed some new things over, was it by Ben Brewing on the corner there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I am actually headed to one of them after this meeting. The bakery right on the corner is dedicated gluten-free.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
And
About
they're
time.
also, it happens to be amazing. So that's what you need to know.
great to know. Yeah, Rachel and I went to the noodle place the other day. And it was lovely to sit out back on the deck. So yeah, definitely recommended.
Is that the place that's off Newport and Wall, or Newport and the park there? Sens or something?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I drive by it, but I didn't know it was open. So that's good to know.
Yeah, and the design of the building is such that you don't get any of the Newport traffic. If you go sit, like it's kind of a long, skinny thing with an arm that sort of blocks off Newport, if that makes sense. So it's really quiet back there and just lovely, I thought.
I like the architectural design of it. I watched it as it was going up. It was every day driving home.
Yeah.
Because we are in the office and have been
Yeah.
March 20th, 2020.
For those with a longer standing or a long-standing association with AHAC, that building was designed by a previous alum, Jim Landon.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to send
Yeah.
him a little note. Way to go, Jim.
I've been going to Oblo Tacos quite often. I really like that spot.
Where is that one, Matt?
In the same complex that the East Side Jackson's Corner is in.
Oh, yeah.
They just opened up a bunch of restaurants, some new, some not, over there. Really good. Good margaritas too.
That's great to know. My husband works over there on that side of town, so yeah. Okay, still no sign of Kathy. We're giving it one more minute, maybe.
My husband is determined for every new Mexican food restaurant that opens, bring home their carne asada fries and try them. So That's what we've had a lot of takeout lately is carne asada fries from multiple new restaurant locations.
Sounds like a very intelligent man.
Exactly. You've got the, a data set determined. You're, making sure that you're only evaluating the single product. You can't possibly compare carne asada fries to chicken enchiladas.
It's much better than apples to apples because then you don't get apples, you get carne asada fries.
You get carne asada fries, exactly. That's hilarious. Excellent.
I'm an El Sancho fan. That's my favorite.
Oh yeah, they just have some magical formula that I don't know. It's okay.
Even their salads are magical. Who can make a salad magical?
Who can make corn magical?
That's true.
Sweet corn is, what I always order, even if I'm just going to take it home for lunch the next day. Yeah, right. They do a great job.
Oh, Juan, it looks like we have a phone caller, so I'm guessing that's Kathy. Do you mind
Checking the phone number right
I
now.
see it. Oh, can you see that?
Yes, that is
Yeah,
Kathy's phone number.
committee
You bring her over.
Schmidt. Oh, perfect. We cannot promote a phone number. However, I can allow it to talk.
Okay. Perfect. Kathy, can you hear us okay?
You might need to press the star key followed by the number 6 to unmute yourself.
Looks like she's there.
Did it work?
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Sorry, and I called the number and I didn't realize I needed a meeting ID, and then it said to have some sort of participant ID, and I didn't have it, and anyway, sorry.
No problem. So with that, Ian, I think we're ready to get started.
All right, excellent. Thanks, everyone. And it looks like we are also live streaming. Juan, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Excellent, thank you. All right, well, I'll look to city staff to confirm that we have roll call complete and accurate. I'm getting the head nod from Lynn. Wonderful, thank you. And let's go on to an approval of July minutes. Do I hear any motions or discussion on this point?
I could move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. And how about public comment? I don't see anyone in the attendee list.
Ian, can I take you back for a sec real quick?
Yep.
Can we
Go ahead.
vote on the minutes? I don't think that happened. Sorry. If I'm missing something, let me know, but let's do a quick vote on the minutes.
My apologies, my computer app crashed. All right, let's have a vote, with either a raised hand or an eye. I'll go through the list. And
I think Ian might be freezing. Ian, holler when you're back on. If not, we may need to do a very quick switch and have somebody jump in as chair.
I'm about 5 minutes from my house. I was going to leave the car and go onto my computer at that time. If you need me to, I can do that. This is Kathy.
all right, I think I'm back.
Okay, yes, you are.
Excellent. Apologies all. It's the curse that Lynn puts on whoever is the temporary chair of this committee. You've all been warned.
Not intentional.
Okay, let's go back to the vote for the approval of the minutes. And I'll start with, in the top left-hand corner, Matt Martino.
I was not present, so I'll abstain.
Thank you. Heather Simmons.
Aye.
Thank you. Allison Homegarden.
Aye. Yeah, yay.
Thank you. And let's see. I believe Kathy. Oh, that's why. Kathy, your vote?
Yes, I.
Thank you. And Ian Schmidt is also an aye. All right, excellent. Thank you for the reminder, Lynn. And now let's open it up for any public comment.
And with this, participants, if you are interested in speaking, please raise your hand. I don't know. There's only a couple folks in there, so.
Yeah. And at this point, we are not seeing any hands, Mr. Chair.
So Ian, I think we're free to move forward. No public comment today. We may have lost Ian again.
Oh no. Oh geez.
Lynn, I can carry us forward if that would help.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. I think if you just want to maybe call the next topic, then Rachel, Ian, we're trying to do some quick substitutions as needed. If you continue to
thank you.
off. So Heather's your backup.
Back in. Yeah, I've called back in on my phone. So thank you. And if I do drop off again, Heather, would you please take over?
Happy to.
Thank you. All right.
So Ian, we're just moving on to the proposal presentations. And I think Rachel's going to introduce this if you're okay with us moving on.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Did you want me to give the timeliness update first?
I'm so sorry, Rachel.
That's okay.
I just thought we were moving on. Yes, Rachel, please give us a timeliness update per the agenda, and then we'll move on to presentations.
Okay. So first, before I jump into the presentation slide, I just want to remind everyone what timeliness is. And for some of our newer AHAC members, this might be the first time you've heard of it. So every May 2nd of the year, HUD performs what's called a timeliness test. And HUD asks that in order for us to continue to receive our CDBG funding, that we timely spend it down. And if they look at two things, they look at what we have spent down in the program year of that year, and they look at what we have spent down accumulatively. And so if we have funding over 1.5% of our
Rachel, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm having a hard time hearing you. I think maybe it's just me.
No, I can't hear her either.
Okay.
So this is very troubling.
That's
'cause
better.
I got a headset to address this issue, but
Okay.
clearly it's not working.
I can hear you clearly now.
You can hear me clearly now? Can everyone hear me clearly now? Okay.
Yeah, but you fade in and out.
Okay. I believe that it's not my headset, that it's actually my computer microphone in some way. So timeliness requires us to maintain our CDBG funding to have percentages of our awards spent down by May 2nd of every year. So that's why we are discussing timeliness, because we awarded funding to Housing Works for some of our CDBG funding for this year, and Housing Works will now apply all of their Affordable Housing Fund award to their projects. And so that CDBG funding needs to be reallocated and needs to be spent down quickly for us to meet our timeliness test in May. Just so that you are aware, the last year of funding spent rather quickly, and I have a little graphic to illustrate that. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the screen demonstrates who was awarded and how much they were awarded. And then the green bar illustrates how much they have not spent. So Central Oregon Council on Aging just had a short amount of, a small amount of money to spend, and that they're probably going to submit an invoice to me shortly that illustrates they've spent that down. Fuse still has a significant amount to spend down, and that number should be there. I don't know why it's not, but I can pull that up and get that to anyone that has questions. When I created this graphic, it was there, so it has disappeared in the sharing state for some weird reason. Habitat has not spent any of their money from 2021 that they were 2020 to 2021 that they were awarded yet, because of various issues, particularly with regards to supply issues and their ability to build under COVID. J spent all their money, Neighbor Impact spent all their money, Saving Grace spent all their money. Both Shepherd's House and Thrive Central Oregon's emergency assistance still have some funds to spend. However, these were funds awarded through the CARES Act, and they technically have 2 more years to spend those funds. And I have no doubt that they will be spent within the next year. So I just wanted you to all see how great our partners did at spending the money that we awarded them in the last fiscal year. And if anyone has questions regarding these spend downs, I'm sure I could answer them for you. Fuse was going to come in and discuss, but I don't see Colleen on the call. I've shot her an email and I haven't heard back from her. So they ran into some issues with regards to when they could start their project. Specifically, HUD awarded them a significant fund for their past year, and they weren't able to access those funds until January. And so they really couldn't get started until this past January. So we extended their contract so that they could spend the remainder of funding that they were allocated. And then they will also receive an additional $20,000 that you awarded in the 2021-2022 funding. Now, I just wanted to touch on what happens when things are not spent timely. When we don't spend timely, it's possible that HUD can pull those funds away from us, which would be a worst case scenario. So it is really important that you consider timeliness of funding whenever you're allocating CDBG funding. In addition, when we don't spend timely, it can be much more of a challenge for us in accounting, particularly with regards to program income, because every dollar we receive in program income, and just to give a brief definition of what that program income is, it's when any loan we have put out there gets repaid or rejuvenated back into our CDBG fund. Those program income dollars have to be spent first, and they can really mess up the years that we have allocated funding because we're spending those dollars first, and then we have to go back and reallocate those funds from 2019 to 2020. And we have a little bit of funding because some of the projects we funded in 2020 and 2019 were paid with program income rather than with the funds that we had originally allocated. So when we do those allocations today, and you'll see that spreadsheet, I sent it out to you earlier today, you will notice that we still have funds from 19 to allocate again, and we still have funds from 2020 to allocate again, because our program income dollars paid for the funding that we issued in those years. And program income is really hard to predict. We kind of got flooded with it because everyone was refinancing their homes during the pandemic and continue to do so. And so we will probably continue to maybe have to reallocate funding from years 19 and 20 and 21 as long as people are refinancing. Any questions? All right.
I don't see any hands raised, so let's proceed. Thank you.
I'll just get us started in presenting the 2 proposals we have today. We have CDBG proposal presentations from Central Oregon Council on Aging, and Core Community Land Trust. We'll get started with Central Oregon Council on Aging's presentation first.
While Rachel's pulling that up, I will note for the committee and our presenters, our format is going to be 5 minutes for presentation, and for the timeliness of the meeting, we do ask that you hold to that, and then 5 minutes of questions from the committee. And then for the second presentation, the same 5 minutes of presentation and 5 minutes of question.
So one thing to note from the Council on Aging's proposal, although it is an eligible activity that we could fund, there are some issues that they are probably hearing for the first time from me, but that all of you need to consider. They're requesting funding that would require Davis-Bacon Act requirements in addition to an environmental review that might increase the cost that they have asked for. And so take that into consideration when you are determining these funding amounts, particularly because I'm waiting for our finance department to get me some solid numbers to reconcile. I do think we do have additional funding to provide, and so we will make those contingencies or those additional fund allocations after you hear the proposals, but I just want you to be aware of them beforehand. And
could you explain what Davis-Bacon is real quick, Rachel?
The Davis-Bacon Act requires that essentially if you're getting federal funding and it exceeds $2,000, just $2,000, that you pay prevailing wages for that construction work. And so again, we want to make sure that if you're excited about this project that Council on Aging is presenting, that we can actually fund what they are asking for. They will also have to do some additional procurement procedures to meet those federal requirements.
Thank you.
If an environmental study is required, what's the approximate timeline on that?
This one should be relatively quick because it's an existing building, so they're not building anything new or changing the environment vastly. However, it will take some staff time. And this is the only project that's been proposed that kind of requires those Davis-Bacon requirements. So I think it's something that staff will have time to kind of hold their hand through the process.
Okay. Thank you. Are you, Rachel, going to be pulling up the presentation?
I am doing that.
Oh, wonderful.
Now.
Thank you. All righty. Hi, everybody. My name is Susan Rotella. I am the Executive Director of the Council on Aging of Central Oregon. Not to be confused with the Central Oregon Council on Aging, which actually no longer exists. Several years ago, we changed our name, so we're no longer COCO, but it seems to take a lot of time for people to stop using that acronym. So we are the Council on Aging of Central Oregon, and I'm thrilled to be here today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about our project at 1036 5th Street. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to follow some of my notes because I'm not very good at staying on any kind of time frame. So for those of you who don't know, the Council on Aging's mission is to advocate for, empower, and guide older adults and their loved ones to live with independence and well-being in their homes. So our primary objective and mission is to provide wraparound services for those seniors who are living at home, not seniors that are living in a community setting. And 92% nationwide of all those seniors who are aging, age in place, age at home. They don't age in a senior living community. Our clients are primarily above the Medicaid level. We do not fund Medicaid, that's Department of Human Services. Our clients are mostly above the Medicaid level, but are not able to provide any kind of support for themselves in terms of private pay for home care or nutrition services. So that's our primary market. Next slide, please. I wanted to first thank each and every one of you for the monies that we did receive in the last round, of which we will definitely spend that last $474, which has actually been spent, but we didn't think we could apply for it because it was in early July and not the end of June. So it's been spent, no problem. And I'm happy to spend anybody else's money that might need to have that done. So we're very grateful. In the last grant, we were able to hire a chef for our expanding nutrition services in Bend and Sisters. And we were also able to upgrade some of the kitchen equipment that we have in this 1950s building, the equipment having been upgraded in 2008 last. Next slide, please. So just a quick set of accomplishments for the Council on Aging. In the year of 2021, our fiscal year over 2020, so this is really 12 months of the pandemic, we actually in Bend increased our meal delivery service from 1 day a week to 3 days a week. We had always intended to move to 3 days a week of in-person, but our budget wouldn't accommodate that. But with the extra CARES Act funding and with the fact that we were moving to grab and go, we took the opportunity to implement 3 days a week instead of one. We increased the number of congregate or community meals, the drive-through grab and go meals, over 10,000 meals over the prior years, which were also an increase over the previous years. We increased the total meals that we served in Bend 52%, and that includes both congregate as well as our Meals on Wheels. We added 6 staff members, including the chef, and we launched a Caring Connections program, which is a program to match volunteers and seniors to address the isolation and loneliness from this pandemic. Next slide, please. Just a couple of photos of just some of our work. We do a lot of intergenerational work. That's the first slide. Is we get a lot of wonderful cards and Meals on Wheels bags decorated by children. We implemented Meals on 2 Wheels this year. We also implemented a USDA grant where we were able to, for the first 6 months of the pandemic, provide a lot of food for people to bring home in addition to their lunches so that they didn't have to go shopping. Next slide, please. In the future, meaning as soon as the pandemic allows us, we'll be transitioning back to in-person dining. We'll continue to provide meals 3 days a week. We'll maintain grab and go in addition to in-person for choice to those seniors who prefer that. We continue to expand our Meals on Wheels capacity, and we are expanding our delivery services out to senior centers that just have have housing, like HUD housing, but they don't have any wraparound services. And we are also growing our ancillary services in pet food, pet services, intergenerational programming, and information and referral. Next slide. So how does your support? What we're asking for is $100,000 toward our phase 2 $600,000 construction or rehabilitation project. The entire project is $2.1 million. We started it 2 years ago. We're opportunistically doing our rehabilitations based upon when we get the amount of funding that we can afford to move forward in a significant manner. We finished phase 1, that was $450,000. We've raised $500,000 toward the $600,000 phase 2, and primarily the focus of that money will be to rehabilitate all of the client-facing areas of our senior center in Bend, our services hub. So that's the area where we provide dining, where we provide activities, information and referral, and all the other case management wraparound services. Next slide. In closing, I just want to reiterate that the Council on Aging is the only nonprofit that is focused solely on the welfare of older adults living at home in Bend. Our population is growing from 20 to 25% of our Deschutes County population is older adults, and growing to 30%. And with your help and also the increase in the funding we've been getting from CARES Act and other funding, we're able to support and expand our services, not only during this pandemic, but after the pandemic, when all of these expenses really do continue. The demand is still there. It's just that we're just starting to understand at the federal level, at least, how much need there really is. Next slide. So thank you. We appreciate your consideration, and we're excited to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And I'm looking for hands raised for any questions from the panelists committee. Matt Martino, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Quick question. Obviously, timeliness is an issue. And then with these new additions to perhaps what needs to be done to get these done, I noticed your timeline. It says that you're rebidding this month. If the rebid process were to happen this month, assuming that the prevailing wage could take place, how quickly do you think construction could take place to where you can start drawing down the funds?
So we already have a contract with SunWest. We're in phase 2 of that, so that's all done. We've done all the preliminary. Our permitting has already been done. These are the same bidders that bid on the entire project from the beginning. They're just updating their bids. So we are working with SunWest to start construction October 1st, and the bidding is happening right now. I don't know what you consider prevailing wage, but we don't get a discount from anybody. So we're definitely paying the prevailing wage and watching it go up as we unfortunately have to, phase our implementation of the entire $2.2 million project. So yes, if I have to bring out the hammer, I'll be doing it.
This question, second part, maybe go to Rachel or Lynn, but if an environmental study or review is required, does an October 1st start date still sound feasible?
Like to say yes.
Did you say that to Lynn or to me?
Lynn or Rachel.
Okay.
I'd like to say yes, but I can't. There's just a lot going on right now. So not without kind of really digging in and getting started. Could I give, I typically say it's going to be at least 5 months. So.
And what is actually an environmental review in terms of, we've obviously got our permits with the city. We have no SDC charges because we're an existing building and nothing is changing about it. The volume of people coming in and out of the building is consistent with the prior uses of it. So what exactly would they be looking? So we may have addressed some of this in prior work. I know it's not done by the city, this committee, but I just wonder what it involves.
So as a recipient of CDBG funding, city staff has to conduct an environmental review. And our staff is—
Rachel, sorry, your mic is going out. Do you want to try again, or do you want me to?
So as a recipient of CDBG funding, the city of Bend has to actually conduct its own environmental review. And that requires just kind of looking at how all the potential environmental impacts of any construction, anytime anything is done. So that would be for a building that already exists, lots of lead abatement and asbestos type of. Those are the two big things typically. And I don't expect that to be an issue. It's just gathering all the information and putting it all into the system is time consuming.
Susan, there's no workaround. We have to be the ones that sign off on it. Unfortunately, we actually have to perform environmental reviews on our own administration of these funds, which is fascinating to me. So it's otherwise known as a NEPA review, and for better or worse, here we are. And so with the type of review that you would need, it is a relatively abbreviated process, but part of the other timeline is, HUD just gave us our contract for this year's funds, and the funding year started July 1. So in order to kind of move this amended annual action plan through public comment and through council and then through HUD, that's another factor. So we can do environmental reviews as that's happening. But Matt, really good question, I'd say. And I think, Rachel and I will do our absolute best to line things up to the Council on Aging schedule. So that we are not the holdup on that, but we absolutely cannot control HUD, as everyone knows. And so
I used to run HUD senior centers, I know.
Yeah.
We have had, when we started our construction, before we started it, we did have both lead survey as well as asbestos. No lead, they found minor asbestos, and it's already been abated. So we have that to contribute to whatever the staff has to do as well. We are also going to be starting our construction in October. We have 500 toward what we're estimating is the 600,000 for phase 2. So we are going to be starting, so we can, and we estimate it's a 4 or 5, maybe 6-month project. So we can always, you can be doing that while we're doing construction, if that's permitted. Because we are, as I said, we've raised 500 toward what we're estimating is the 600,000 that we need for phase 2. If we got 800,000, I would spend it in phase 2. But right now we have 500,000 and we're hoping for 100 from the city. And if we had to advance it from our services reserves, we can do that if it took longer to do the environmental study. So believe me, I will do whatever it takes to spend the money.
You're in the SunWest pipeline as well, so there's no postponing that.
Yeah. Steve Buechner is one of my best friends. He hears from me regularly.
Excellent. Thank you. Heather Simmons, I believe you had your hand up previously, but I see it's down now. Do you have a additional
Yes,
question?
Matt articulated my question. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Susan, one question from me. I was excited to hear that you were able to bring additional staff on. Given the ongoing staffing issues that lots of businesses are having, do you believe that you'll be able to keep that level of staffing, or does the churn in the labor market, do you feel that's going to impact you and the organization's operations going forward?
I think everyone will be impacted to a greater or lesser degree. We've had a couple of people that that decided to retire early, as I think we're seeing happen nationwide, because our staff worked throughout the pandemic because we're operations and front facing and had to pivot a lot. A lot of, some folks got burned out and decided to retire early. Actually, we're interviewing, they just left July 31st and we're interviewing for their jobs for candidates Thursday and Friday. I have not had a problem attracting good quality talent. Great benefits. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that's exciting. I'll look for any other hands, any other questions before we move on. Just for the sake of timeliness, any other questions? Apologies, I'm on my phone, so I have to flip through all the AHAC folks. I don't.
Kathy has her hand up.
Yeah, and I want to apologize for being late to the meeting. So you may have covered this, and so my apologies if this has already been answered. But do we have enough money to give both applicants the full amount of money that they're requesting, or do we have to limit the amount that we're giving out? So Lynn, could you answer that?
Yeah, the requests are almost exactly what we have in the bank. The one sort of asterisk with that is that we may actually have a little bit more. So we are asking for you all to create a contingency when you do the awards. If we discover that there is a little bit more, sort of just depending on what loan repayments have come in recently and ensuring that our numbers match up with finance, we'd love to know where you all would like to send that if that does happen. So.
Again, if you have any more money, we're happy to move phase 3 projects into phase 2.
All right. Kathy, any other questions from you?
You can't see me. The answer is no. I was shaking my head. Sorry.
Okay, great. Yeah, had to get over there.
We have a hand from Heather. I don't know if that's remaining or if that, okay.
It's new. In consideration of Davis-Bacon, Rachel, when might we have some estimates about the impact of that to the pro forma?
I mean, I don't know that AHAC would, but I would get that to Council on Aging as soon as I could. It might determine whether or not they would want this funding or not.
Okay. I presume we would get some information back if we were to entertain the cost of the proposal. So
Yeah, it would impact the amended annual action plan that's presented for you at the September meeting. So that's when you would know, yeah. Whether or not they're going to take the money or not.
I'm happy to answer any questions or review anything tomorrow, if Rachel, that would help expedite. Thank you.
Yes.
Rachel, is there a way to kind of go around that to where maybe the funds could be utilized for material acquisition, but not for labor only?
No.
Okay.
And prevailing wage does that mean competitive wages? Because we're certainly getting competitive wage, higher than competitive?
Yeah, I can help answer that one. It's in my wheelhouse. Davis-Bacon are federally set minimum wages that have to be paid to all trades based on the activities and job descriptions. And they are, by and large, substantially more expensive than standard Central Oregon construction wages. And so the cost is one piece, and then the other piece is there's a significant paperwork burden to go along with it. And that often becomes a point of conversation with general contractors who have to take on a substantial amount higher paperwork burden to handle that.
In addition, Oregon prevailing wage is what would be here. So it's even higher than the federal standard.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is. I can't imagine.
So yeah, I think it's best probably if we have a separate meeting offline about this after this meeting, and we can talk through the specifics of it and present you with all the information at that time. I think that's probably the best.
Yep.
Ian, I have a question. It's Kathy.
Kathy, go ahead.
So sort of tagging on what Matt's question was, if they're not spending the money that we're giving, they're spending some of the other money that they already have, can't they go and use, like you, I think you said that, no, boy, Lynn is shaking her head. So taking the money from us kind of freezes all their money? Wow.
That's accurate. Yeah, it colors the entire project.
And people have gotten very creative over time trying to segregate in ways so that this doesn't affect the whole project, and that doesn't usually go well, I'll say. And obviously getting it right up front is definitely in everybody's interest. So so we'll follow up after the fact. Yeah, it's a hassle. And you know, it's for all the right reasons, right? We should be paying people living wages to do the work if there's federal money in it, but it can be a challenge. So
yeah, agreed. Thank you all for your questions, and folks from Council on Aging Central Oregon, thank you for the presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Have a good day. Bye now.
All right, and next up is CORE. Rachel, I'm sure you're pulling that presentation up, and it sounds like we have two presenters from CORE. This is a time for you to unmute yourselves and give us a presentation. Please do try to keep it around 5 minutes, and we will try to keep our questions to about the same amount. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks. My name is Jackie Keogh. I'm the new Executive Director of CORE Community Land Trust. And with me is Amy Warren, our Land Development Director and co-founder. Next slide, please.
Oh, hold on. The slide doesn't want to move.
While we're waiting, more congratulations to Matt.
I have ran into this issue before, and I always forget what is the fix. There we go.
Awesome. Technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So CORE Community Land Trust is a nonprofit affordable housing developer who focuses on home ownership. We have 3 values that drive our development: affordability. So we're creating mixed income communities that are permanently affordable, which means when all of you fund a core unit, it will be affordable in perpetuity every time it resells. Our other value is sustainability. We build net zero energy to ensure equitable access to energy efficient homes and energy efficient homes for the city of Bend. And lastly, our development value is equitable access. So we are reaching households who have been excluded from home ownership and wouldn't be able to purchase a home without our program. Next slide, please. So some of you know about the community land trust model. This is a great visual that goes over it. But simply put, the community land trust model ensures that homes will always be affordable assets for the city. In the model, households own their home outright by leveraging a traditional mortgage, just like you or I, while the land trust owns the land underneath the home and leases it back to the homeowner through a 99-year renewable land lease. This is just a mechanism that allows us to ensure that if the homeowner ever decides to sell their home, it would sell to another income qualified homeowner at no additional cost to the nonprofit or to the city. The original homeowner receives a fair return on their initial investment while also helping future generations have access to affordable homes just like they did. This one-time investment creates long-term community assets for the city. Next slide, please. So specifically, CORD increased the affordable homeownership units that would initially serve an average of 12 people. We get to that because our average household size is 3 people, and we are looking at producing 4 units per this request. Long-term, because the land trust model uses deed restrictions upon resale to ensure it resells to more households, that's where you're seeing the resale number of 33. So we'd be able to serve 33 households throughout the lifetime of the home. We're using a forecast that assumes over 50 years the home will be around. I would say these homes are really high quality, so you probably expect more, and that homeowners would sell every 6 years. So that's just an average based on national stats. Next slide, please. So CORE focuses on City of Bend's workforce that includes teachers, builders, service, maintenance workers, and many more people who contribute to the fabric of our economy. These are working families that can qualify for a mortgage, but they just can't afford to purchase home on the rising market while their own wages remain stagnant. So in creating, CORE creates mixed income communities, and so our income range for this proposal would be 3 low-income households earning between 40 to 80% area median income, with 1 middle-income household earning between 80 and 120%. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Amy Warren.
Thank you. So from the request that you guys have all read, that offer fell through. Unfortunately, the seller was not really willing to work with the timeline that comes along with CDBG funding. But we were fortunate enough to very quickly find another half-acre property. It is in Southeast Bend on Poplar. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, in an area that has RL zoning. The property, we have come to an agreement with the seller, who happens to be Avion Water. They will sell it to us for $300,000 if we can close by the end of the year, or $325,000 if we close after January 1st. After doing a couple of environmental reviews, we're feeling like we need to plan for the $325,000, and we'll get really lucky if we end up getting closed up by the end of the year. The development pro forma from the application we initially submitted to this, we're going to need a little bit of leeway on to come back to you guys with something more concrete. This particular property, because it's RL, can be subdivided one time into 2 parcels. As soon as the new House Bill 2001 takes effect, and after that triggers the Senate Bill 458 to take effect, we will be able to put optimally a 4-plex on each of those 2 lots, giving us 8 units total. We can also, if we do a 4-plex or lower, we've consulted with an attorney, we should be able to sell those units individually without subdividing and also without going through the condominium process. So if we are able to, in our pre-app with the City of Bend, come to a realization that those 8 units are possible from an infrastructure standpoint, not subdividing the property the way we have done with our other 2 projects using the cottage code is going to save us a significant amount of infrastructure funds on that big pro forma. We do plan with this particular community, as with our others, to fulfill our goal of serving the Missy Middle as well, and 25% of, up to 25% of the homes will be dedicated to that, but will not be paid for by federal funds. Next slide, please, Rachel. So we put in the project timeline because it changed just a little bit. We also adjusted the project budget for the price of this new property and have kind of outlined of where we're anticipating the other funds to come from. We're in speaking with Meyer Memorial Trust. We're working with them. Pretty good chance that we have a pending award that will drop in December. And we also have been offered some private lending through some supporters of ours. The private lending does come with an interest rate, and we would end up reimbursing that through other funding in the future. But so if there's any way for excess funding to come into the land acquisition of this project, it would save the project funding as a whole. Next slide, Rachel. So for the funding, we're just requesting the standard land acquisition terms. The offer is accepted. I have a tentative meeting with our civil engineer tomorrow to draw up a preliminary site plan and schedule a pre-app for next Thursday. So really the sellers and ourselves are excited to use these funds as soon as the environmental review and all the other stuff is in order. Next slide. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Kathy, go ahead. Kathy, you're muted. If you could unmute, please.
Thank you. One of us has to do this every meeting, right? So it's me. Thanks, Amy. I'm excited at the thought that you might be able to do the 2 4-plexes and utilize the ownership of them. I was just curious, will you be changing your model to be more townhouse type of, like 4 townhouses, or you think it's going to be 2 below, 2 above, and it's going to be more of like a co-op type of ownership? Because I know you said you're not going to be having to do it as a condo. So have you thought through the building type a little bit more that way?
Yeah, so with the House Bill and Senate Bill, we would be able to use. We would prefer to have shared wall, not stacked.
Sorry to interrupt. Rachel, can you stop sharing your screen, please? Thank you. Sorry, Amy.
And Amy, we can't hear you. Sort of at the very end, your voice got very soft. I don't know if it's a connection on your end, or I can just barely hear you when you're speaking.
Okay, I'll lean in close. Is that better?
That's a little better, yeah.
You have to look at my face really close then, though.
Oh, that's okay. I'll read your lips.
Yeah, with the maintenance agreement, the legal maintenance agreement that would be required to use this model, we would prefer shared wall as opposed to stacked. we're really going to have to defer to the civil engineer on this one because like many of the other things that we do, this is new forged territory.
Yeah, it seems like you could use a townhouse model, you know, 4 on one side, 4 on the other, and get what you need. And ultimately, it might be possible to actually subdivide the lots as well. But if not, you know, at least the units are, you get the double wall as if there's a property line there. So, okay, good. You're thinking through that. Thank you. I'm sorry you didn't work out for the other property, but this is kind of a great opportunity for the city to see how this our new legislation can work and the new zoning. So that's actually, from my point of view, having worked on that, really exciting to see it come to fruition. So the silver lining, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? I do have one, and I suppose it'll probably be for Amy, but whichever of you feels best suited to it. You have some completed projects and frankly, a great deal of built work over the last few years that I very much congratulate you all on as an organization. What lessons have you learned from those projects that you can apply to this one? How is your process more streamlined or more efficient now?
We've learned to adjust our timeline based off of funding and permitting schedules. We came in at first with, you know, my experience more in a for-profit world with a lot of optimism about how the funding was going to go, and so, you know, we just adjust. We also, one of the things we learned with the buyers was that we have currently lawyer, attorney mentors that review the ground lease with them. It's quite a lengthy legal document. We're also going to bring in with the next homeownership application, realtor mentors, because when we serve as the seller and provide the purchase sale agreement, which is another legal document, it looks a little bit different than it does with a traditional purchase. And for them to be able to go and ask a neutral party and not have to come to the seller with questions about, you know, I think, what is an underwriter and how long does this take and what can we expect, will be very helpful for those folks. We also learned that Lynn and Rachel are some of our best allies out there. not to brown nose or anything.
I would also say that when we did our first development, we had 1 full-time staff, and now we have 2.5 FTE. And so that was going to make significant support for the focus on this project.
Excellent. All that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you, both of you.
Ian, you're on mute.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands up, before we proceed into deliberations, let's go through a brief conflict of interest, and I'll look for city staff. Is this an apparent conflict of interest declaration or an apparent or an actual?
So Michael is on. He is one of our city attorneys. At this point, you all are making recommendations to council. And so if you think that there is any chance you have a potential conflict of interest and or a real conflict of interest, I would strongly suggest that you just declare it and get it up front. Most likely that will be a potential conflict of interest because you all are not the final decision makers. But be cautious with this one, go big. It's okay to say more than you need to, but if you say less than you need to, that can be challenged later on. So, and then hopefully Michael is paying attention and can jump in if anyone has questions beyond that.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I will start with, once my phone cooperates, I'll start with Allison. Allison, any conflicts of interest for you to declare?
I do have a potential conflict of interest. Our firm represents Core Community Land Trust. I have not worked on this matter at all, but they are a client of ours.
I think my follow-up question then, and Michael, please feel free to tell me to be quiet if I'm on the wrong track or correct me, but I think the question is your compensation or your job in any way based on what happens with today's decision?
It is not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Kathy Austin.
I guess I'm just going to err on the extreme side of caution on this one. I'm a local architect, and in case they wanted to hire me because I've done a ton of townhouses, I'm just putting it out there. So right now, I don't appear to have any conflict, but Lynn, does that?
Yeah,
does that
just to
cover
clarify, you're not currently contracted or negotiating anything with them.
Nothing.
This is like within the potential realm of possibility someday. Okay. Yeah,
right, out there in the universe,
right?
You know, but as of right now, there's no connection whatsoever.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Matt Martino.
I have a potential conflict of interest if the proposed buyers choose to utilize me for lending services.
Are you currently in discussion with any potential buyers about this parcel?
Negative.
Okay.
Negative.
Okay.
All right, Heather Simmons.
No conflicts or potential conflicts that I am aware of.
Excellent, thank you. For myself, Ian Schmidt, I have no actual or potential conflicts of interest for either of these folks that we'll be deliberating about.
Michael, do you have any follow-up questions or are we clear? Okay, thank you very much.
Nope, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you all. So for deliberations, since we have a slightly smaller group, we'll look for robust participation from everyone that is here on the committee. Let's open to deliberations. Any thoughts or motions that you all think you'd like to bring forward? Matt. Yeah, Matt, go ahead. I saw your hand first.
So we have some fun ones on this, in my opinion, in that the prevailing wage may prohibit a project from taking place if it becomes too cost extreme. But so we're probably going to have a couple of different if and then statements on this. I'm foreseeing, but if I were to just offer a quick opinion on how this goes, since we're basically right somewhat even on what's requested, we give everybody their ask, and then 100,000 on Council of Aging, 250,000 on core, and then any excess up to, well, any excess we could split evenly amongst them because it looks like both could have usage. But then we could also say if Council of Aging chooses not to pursue their project, we could fund a little bit more towards core since it's going, that 25,000 is still on the table. Take care of it real quick.
That makes sense. Heather, your hand went up at pretty much the exact same time as Matt's. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess same topic. I just was sort of wondering how shall we entertain this project since we don't have all the information yet, and what might happen. Perhaps to Matt's point is we work with what we know today. And then if something substantial changes, I then don't know what we do.
All right, Lynn and Rachel, I'll ask, I know that we did hear earlier that we will be receiving more information at the September meeting. Does it make more sense for us to, from a staff point of view, to make a recommendation today with the information we know? And then is there a possibility to reevaluate at the September meeting and modify that recommendation? Or is our recommendation today one that will be moved on to council and will be then out of our hands?
What I would suggest is that you make a recommendation based on what you have in front of you with the assumption that both projects will proceed. However, I would also encourage you, rather than waiting till we have all the information in September, to create a contingency. And what that looks like is if so-and-so does not move forward, or if so-and-so only wants $1,000, whatever that thing is, AHAC chooses to award X number additional to the other one, basically. So you guys can kind of create, or you all can create whatever sort of contingency you're interested in. It can be kind of an if-then statement, or it can be any number of other things. So traditionally what you've done is just say, if one doesn't move forward, or if we have more money than what we think we have right now, this should happen, and sort of create that backup plan, if that makes sense. I'm happy to continue to talk that through further if y'all want to ask more specific questions on that, but that should cover us and give staff the ability to create a plan to bring back to you in September, so that you can approve it then, and we're not still deliberating, if that makes sense.
It does. Matt, your hand is up again.
Thought of a way to kind of streamline what I had said earlier. We get 100,000 to Council on Aging, 250,000 to core. If Council on Aging chooses not to proceed, up to 100,000 can go to core in addition to the 250, because they're utilizing at least 50,000 in the loans, which they would have to repay and potentially pass down to the buyer, because they'd be paying interest on it from the get-go. So it could make these projects a bit more affordable if we use CDBG funds rather than their private loan funding, based on the project timeline and project budget that we receive. So increasing affordability, utilizing CDBG funds for land acquisition. So that could be a contingency. If Council on Aging doesn't proceed, up to 100,000 as needed would go to core for land acquisition.
All right, Kathy.
I agree with that, but I was also thinking, shouldn't we address the issue that if there's more money that becomes available, perhaps that could go to Council on Aging to help them with the prevailing wage issue? So that would be the other contingency, that, definitely keep the 250,000 for core, but only give them the up to 100,000 if, in fact, Council on Aging rejects our funds because it constrains them too much. But should Council on Aging use the 100,000 and we have more money, that we consider giving it to them to help with the cost of prevailing wage?
I love that.
I love it
All
too.
right.
We just have to get it in written form.
So, yeah, for the other folks on the committee who have potentially other thoughts, what other discussion can we have, or do we want to move to a motion?
I agree with this.
All right, well, it sounds like we might be ready for a motion, and I see Matt's hand up.
I'll do my best here. I'll try to get a motion going. I move to recommend to Council an award of 100,000 to the Council on Aging and an award of 250,000 to core, with contingencies to the Council on Aging if any excess funds become available, that it goes to them, and a contingency to core if Council of Aging chooses to deny or back away from the transaction, that up to 100,000 goes to core for the land acquisition.
Is that 100 additional thousand, Matt?
100 additional, yes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I believe that was Heather. All right, then I believe we should vote on that as our next order of process. And I'll go through the list and ask you to vote with a verbal aye or a raised hand. I'll start with Heather.
Aye.
Thank you. Matt Martino.
Aye.
Allison Homegarden.
Aye.
Thank you. Kathy Austin.
Aye.
Thank you. And Ian Schmidt is also an aye. I believe that motion carries. Thank you all. And let's see where we are on time. I think we're doing okay on time. Let's move to the staff report on our agenda. So Lynn, the floor is yours.
Sure, a lot easier when the money lines up, isn't it? Well done. So first of all, I wanted to introduce you all to the newest member of our team. We now have a third person in the Office of Housing, and that is Amy Fraley. She is, I think, week 4. It's all blending together. Really excited. So she came in as a coordinator, same as Rachel, and is here to oversee not only the new construction excise tax, but really just to jump in and do all the things as Rachel and I do. So thrilled to have Amy on board. Keep an eye out for her. You may be hearing from her directly as time goes on. We are doing the city a standards and specs update. And this is not something that keeps most of us awake at night, but it is really important. And so wanted to let you all know, we're actually in the public comment period for that, and it looks like it ends this Friday. So I'm sorry for the last minute. I will forward you all an email shortly after this meeting with that info. You all also can look it up yourselves. And if you know folks who are interested in this sort of thing, the website is bendoregon.gov/SS update. Or bendoregon.gov/standards-specifications. And both of those two pages are linked to one another and all the information is there, but wanted to let you know that that's out there. Another thing I'll be forwarding you is Oregon Housing and Community Services is embarking on their QAP or Qualified Allocation Plan update. This is the plan that governs how they allocate federal funding within the state of Oregon, and they sort of wrap their own funding into that as well. So it is a beefy survey. I just did it the other day and had to come back to it multiple times because it took me a while. You can choose to skip over certain sections. So if there are parts that are more interesting to you or not, you can choose to do that. This is really important stuff. So if you feel like you have the knowledge to go through that, answer the questions that you are comfortable with, I will forward you that email. I believe that survey is open for a while. Something to consider is just sort of the growth in Bend and the fact that our data really doesn't catch up for many years. And so sometimes we are, I think, discounted at the state and federal level because of that. Our data is just so far behind compared to communities that are growing more slowly. And so that was something I was really trying to focus on in my feedback on the QAP survey was, let's figure out a way to ensure that that as cities are growing, if the data is so far behind that those cities aren't getting left behind in allocations. But that's up to you. Happy to answer questions on that. If folks have them, just reach out to me directly. So Allison attended the council committee check-in a while ago. Allison, are you still up for giving a very quick recap of that?
Yes, as best my memory serves. Let's see. I think this was they reviewed the budget, and the city has made a lot of investment into housing and homelessness. So that was very encouraging. They talked about some of the new staff hires as well, and overall, I just kind of chimed in and thanked them and reminded them that we're here to support those goals and what we can assist as needed. I think I just kind of mentioned that it was a historic investment. I mean, this is larger than we've seen in a long, long time. So that was very encouraging. And I think that's about it. Let me know, Lynn, if I missed something critical, but it was just sort of being there to thank them and encourage them for all they're doing in housing issues.
Allison, thanks so much for representing the committee at that. I agree. It was pretty quick, I think, in terms of the committee role on that, but exciting to see what council is doing with these funds and ensuring that that housing and homelessness is prioritized. So, and I don't know, we do have both of our counselor liaisons on the call today. So if you all want to jump in and say anything else, please feel free, but no pressure if you don't.
Lynn, I'll just say that I was able to watch the recording, and I thought the entire presentation around housing, generally speaking, was excellent, and it was helpful to me. So I encourage other folks on the committee to think about going and reviewing that. I particularly enjoyed the slides around the different brackets and where we are in terms of housing costs and the pivot to middle income housing and some of those other things. I don't know if some of that would be helpful to refresh this committee on.
Thank you. Yeah, we can do that. Thanks, Al. Oh, sorry.
I believe Councilor Campbell would like to speak. Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. And thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everyone. But I wanted to reiterate, just because there was a story in the paper, I think a couple of years ago, blaming council for money unspent from allocations that we had given out. So I just wanted to, make the point again that you all work so hard to make sure that those funds go out just as quickly as you can. And sometimes the organizations just cannot spend the money in the allotted time, but it certainly is not because of any negligence on the part of this committee. You all do such a great work getting those funds out in order to build housing as quickly as possible. And we really, really appreciate all the work you do. One question I had was, I thought there might be a discussion about that question of dollars per door or dollars for housing that is for sale, or dollars for housing that is low barrier homeless. And maybe that has happened and I missed it, but if I was correct and that's a discussion this committee might have, I would be interested in an update on that. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Schenkelberg.
Okay.
Anything additional from you?
I just wanted to say hi.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm going to hand it to Rachel, if that's okay, for the assessment of fair housing update. And then I have a couple more items after that.
Did we want to let Barb know that we did discuss that a little bit? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and Councilor Campbell, I can send you the link to the last meeting. I was really pleased. I've been telling the community, and I don't always tell the committee, but I feel like your discussion and thoughtfulness around that discussion was really fantastic. And so I feel like as staff, that is like our holy grail. Is we want you to be informed and have good discussion based on that information. And so I was just really happy with how that discussion went and how thoughtful you all were with those issues. And so just really pleased and wanted to say that out loud to you, because I've been saying that all around town to everybody else. So thank you all for your work in this field and for supporting the city on so many levels, and your thoughtful discussion and expertise on really challenging topics like that one.
So I will be in contact with, I believe Joanna and Heather had volunteered to do some focus groups or meetings to reach out to our community and kind of get their feedback on our assessment of fair housing. If you haven't visited our fair housing website, it is at bendoregon.gov/fair housing. And we have surveys up on our website that will close on August 27th. And they are surveys both in English and Spanish for people to provide feedback regarding their fair housing experience in Bend. That assessment of fair housing feedback will continue to be collected even after the survey closes from more targeted groups and organization and culturally specific and other partners over the next month and a half. So that doesn't end at the end of this survey, if that makes sense. And we will, both Amy and I will be conducting those focus groups and presentations and kind of interactive meetings. We're getting them set up. So if anyone else is wanting to participate in those or facilitate those, please let me know right away. I remember Heather and Joanna had volunteered, and if anyone else is interested, let me know.
Wanted to also let this group know we had a really solid pool of applicants for the open at-large AHAC position. I believe both Councillor Campbell and Councillor Shakelberg will be helping Mayor Russell with interviews that I believe will kick off in the near future. So really, really great candidate pool, in my opinion, just with variety and sort of why folks were coming to the table. So really pleased about that. And then also wanted, Ian represented this group at the House Bill 2001 hearing at Planning Commission. And Ian, are you still up for giving a quick overview of what happened there?
Yeah, I certainly can. Thank you. So the Planning Commission hearing on the proposed code changes to Bend Code based on House Bill 2001. There was not a great deal of discussion amongst the Planning Commission members. It seemed they were all generally in support with no significant alterations. There was a small amount of discussion around format and parking. The public comment, I'd say, really had a few key issues that kept coming up. One of them was quite a few members of the public that were commenting wanted to talk about short-term rentals, which aren't particularly in the scope of what's being proposed. They're slightly related to one section of it, but in a pretty minor way. There was quite a bit of public comment on the topic of parking, especially as the neighborhoods would potentially be gaining more units in the same footprint or similar lot footprints, but in traditionally single-family residential neighborhoods. There was quite a bit of interest in what the parking requirements for that would be. I'd say at the end of the meeting, the upshot of it was that after further discussion amongst the members of the Planning Commission, they moved the items on with a recommendation to approve to City Council, really with no significant alterations or changes, and Planning Commission's blessing.
Thank you. So next steps for House Bill 2001 is we will do a work session at Council, the first meeting in September, and then they will have their hearing on the code the second meeting in September. So the work session will look substantially similar if you all have watched any of the work sessions or the NLA meeting that happened a while ago. Basically same format. If you haven't watched the code presentation, you all have heard me speak enough that I don't know that you need to tune in for that part, but Pauline's code presentation, I think there's a lot of information in there, and we've been really thinking about how we could try to simplify that for public consumption. I'll say it is complex to do because there really are so many changes, and sort of understanding the limitations of the decisions that we can and can't make as a city is challenging. So please consider tuning into that. If you can't make it to that work session, first council meeting in September, you'll find recordings of Planning Commission work session and hearing, or there's probably a recording of the Neighborhood Association meeting that we did right around that same time too. If you can't find that, let me know and I'll send you a link. But I do think it's worth watching at least Pauline's presentation to understand a little bit more about what these changes will do and sort of what we can and can't do. And of course, I am more than happy to answer any questions. If you all have sort of direct questions about the code or why we did what we did, please feel free to reach out to me directly on that one too. So with that, I think we had tentatively thought we'd have Ian go to the council hearing on behalf of AHAC. And Kathy, I know that your plans have changed. So I don't know If we want to sort of retool that, we could definitely have 2 AHAC members testify. Kathy, if you want to come back into the mix, whatever you all would like to do, we'll roll with. So would love to have a volunteer from AHAC go to that council meeting hearing at that second meeting in September. I can find that date for you while we're hanging out.
Kathy, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, so I just want to say originally I was supposed to have a knee replacement like the day before. And because COVID and nursing shortages, St. Charles has canceled everything. So it's not going to be till the end of December. So I am available and be happy to be at either or both, whatever you all want. So just let me know. And Ian, if you and I, we can tag team it too, you know, whatever. I'm available. That I wasn't going to be available, now I am available. So just, if you need me, great. If you don't, that's fine too. So.
All right. Well, unless anyone else would also like to additionally volunteer, I'm looking at everyone, not seeing an overwhelming rush of volunteers, especially not Matt. Reasonable.
I'll volunteer if you want to come watch a newborn overnight.
I'm busy that evening.
Emphasis on overnight.
All right. So it sounds like Kathy and I will coordinate with Lynn and figure out the just exact technicalities of how we're going to do that. Lynn, I think that gets you everything you need for that point. We can move on.
I think that's it for staff report. Rachel or Amy, did I forget anything?
You didn't. I had one more thing to add. I have final reports from everyone that spent all that money down. I didn't want to send an additional email with more attachments before today's meeting. So you'll see that email from me after this meeting, but it'll just include everyone that has completed their spending for funding year 2021 and all their accomplishments with those dollars. Counselor Campbell and Schenkelberg, would you be interested in receiving that as well? All right, I'll send it on to you too. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right, I see that we do have, and we're not in the order of the agenda anymore, but we are still in the staff report section. So before we adjourn, I see that Colleen Sinsky has been able to join. Between staff and Colleen, are we able to hear that update from Fuse at this point?
I'd say it's up to you, Chair, and the members of the committee.
All right. By my watch, we still have time available in the meeting, and that is something that's of significant interest to me. So I believe we'd like to invite Colleen Sinsky to present the information that she's able to bring. Juan, if you could move her over, please.
She should be moving over right now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Colleen, welcome. We understood earlier on that you would be bringing us just some additional clarity about timeline, and we appreciate you being here and bringing that information. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Great. Well,
Yes.
Thanks so much for inviting me to talk. I just wanted to join for a minute and share Fuse's status with the CDBG funds. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to hear the update earlier, so I apologize if I missed something or I'm repeating, but as just a quick recap, the AHAC generously funded Fuse for $55,000 in order to fund some of the most vulnerable folks experiencing homelessness in Central Oregon, primarily Bend, using a community-based permanent supportive housing model. So we're working on getting folks from the coordinated entry system who are identified as the most vulnerable into housing placements in the community with those supportive services. And we're leveraging $107,000 of HUD rental assistance to do that. The goal with that HUD fund is to house 8 individuals. So we're currently working with 12 folks, and we have 2 households, or a total of 3 individuals who we have ended homelessness for, and they're in housing, which I'm thrilled about. Both of them had been homeless for over 15 years. They both have really significant health and mental health issues. And it's really incredible to get to hear how like their grandkids are getting to visit and their health has improved already. So The stories we're getting to see are amazing and optimistic, but it is personally frustrating to me to feel like we have this rental assistance and we have the services funding for homelessness, but there aren't the units available. And it is an incredibly difficult time to try to be developing a program to house the most vulnerable folks in this housing market. So I think my biggest fear is having to send money back to HUD. I really want this money to be spent in Central Oregon. I really want it to be spent housing the most chronically homeless, most at-risk folks. I think that the scattered site model that we're currently using is really difficult. There's a lot of reasons why that model is great and it's a good testing ground. Longer term, I think that we do need to work towards having that brick and mortar actual designated site where we are the property management company and we can set those standards for folks. So this has been a great experience in learning. And we are facing not being able to spend down as we'd planned. So out of that 55,000 that was granted, we have spent down 19,000 of it, working with 12 folks. Some of the reasons why was that number one was that HUD had some delays due to COVID. Their timeline was pushed from October to when we expected to receive the grant to January 1st. So our timeline was pushed out by several months. Just the housing shortage in general, and that the county is invoicing us for less for those supportive services than we'd planned on. Which is actually good news because they're still providing the services. They're just not billing us for it. They're using other funds for that. And in an effort to kind of mitigate the difficulty of making these housing placements, we're awarded a grant from Pacific Source to create a landlord mitigation fund and incentivize housing placements. And we're doing that with Housing Works and the HLC. We're also extended a contract to Reach to work with our folks and working with DCBH to hire a full-time person, a peer support. And then again, just longer term working towards that brick and mortar. So I am more than happy to answer any questions. I want to be really transparent. If there's anything I missed, I'm happy to share or connect later. I'm not sure about timing.
Thank you for that report. We absolutely do still have time. And I am looking, looks like Kathy has a question. Go ahead, Kathy.
Of course I have a question. It's more actually for Lynn and Rachel than it is for Colleen. It seems like so many of the funds that we're able to distribute are often just for brick and mortar type expenses and not personnel, and that there are times when the personnel is more needed because there's a backlog and there's nobody to do the paperwork that needs to be done. Can some of the funds, that 50,000 that we've allocated, is it possible that they could be used for, no, she's shaking her head no, because we committed to a certain use for it when it was distributed?
So right now, the Affordable Housing Fund does not allow for any surface provision. It's just for units. CDBG, remember, of that total federal entitlement, we are limited to 15% of CDBG being used for public services, and that's all the accompanying support services. There is hope on the horizon in that we did create a new construction excise tax, and 50% of that construction excise tax revenue can be dedicated towards services as well. Those services will be limited to those making 30% of area median income and under, which lines up very well with the work that Colleen and Fuse is doing. But still sort of allowing for the permit revenue to come in. It's been a crazy year, of course, especially with commercial and industrial permits and our software system. So I'm still sort of waiting for those funds to continue to roll in amounts that will be meaningful, but we should be providing you all with some more information on what we have in the bank on that one in the near future when we start talking about the next round of funding allocation. So yeah, unfortunately, and Kathy, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that is, as you all know, sometimes our most competitive funding is that services funding, and it's just so limited, particularly when you think about the timeliness requirements of CDBG and the need for really highly skilled staff in this area. who would like to work for more than just a year at a time. So that is, I'd say, one of the most challenging aspects of funding the work that Fuse is doing right now is finding long-term services funding that can be enticing enough to hire the people that you really need to do this work, because they are high-level folks with a lot of training for a long enough period of time that they want to come and work for you, that they have a contract for more than 9 months or a year, or whatever it is that we can promise. So it's a huge issue.
Is some of the emergency funding that's coming to us from the state, is that something that's also tied up in that same way, or can some of that be used for personnel?
Yes and no. So yes, I mean, some of the funds that we have put out, I mean, CARES Act, as you all know, a huge proportion of the CARES Act money went towards various services for vulnerable populations, is sort of how we termed it. So you all made big awards. One of the things that CARES Act did was remove that public services cap of 15%. You all made big awards. That's what kept the low barrier shelter open all of last year, among other things. So that was huge. And then the ARPA funds, that's a huge part of what ARPA funds are going to be doing too, is benefiting these folks. Again, all of these funds have timeliness requirements to some degree. Each fund has its own rules. So getting them all to align takes some work and ensuring that we're in compliance. One of the challenges with ARPA is the way that was written. It cannot go to a problem that existed before COVID. There has to be a COVID link, more or less. And I'm significantly overgeneralizing here. I'll just give you that warning. But we have looked at how can we help sort of housing generally and affordable housing generally. And it is challenging to some degree because that problem was so acute even before COVID. So we can show the delta from what was happening to what is happening now. But it's not kind of a free-for-all, if that makes sense, like I was hoping it might be. So we are continuing to get really creative, and I will say that the efforts are quite literally across the city. I mean, even our utility department is creating assistance funds that, kind of help with sort of the greater need. We are very much at the table in discussions of how those funds should be allocated. And council's been working through them, as you know, at the stewardship committee and elsewhere. So yeah, and I can bring y'all a report on sort of how those funds are being allocated more directly. To some degree, that's what Allison listened to at the council committee check-in. So that might be a good thing to review. I'll add that to my list, is to send out that link so that y'all can take a look at how those are being expended as well. But we can provide more information if you're interested.
I would just add that all of those funding streams, even if we could provide for operations of such services, are short term. So we don't have a sustainable funding stream for services.
Yes.
Excellent point, Rachel. Thank you.
That has become like the crux of developing the brick and mortar. We've realized like that is the question and the barrier, that the services grants are generally in 1 to 2 year cycles, but developer wants to know that he's not going to be left holding the bag 10 years from now. So on that note, I'm working with Housing Works and are funded by Pacific Source to hire a consultant and kind of pull together a technical task force. Would love if any of you are interested in joining that to kind of work on solving that problem and coming up with a replicable model for that, coming up with that services funding. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Count me in, Colleen.
Councilor Campbell, it looks like you have your hand up for a question or a comment. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ian. Colleen, thank you so much for your work with this group. It's just really doing such an important service for our entire community, not just those individuals. I'm wondering if there's any opportunity for overlap with our turnkey acquisition. And if it's a long, long answer, I'd be so happy to talk to you at another time.
Well, I would love to talk another time, but I think the short answer is that yes, it's possible. And that would look like probably master leasing units. There's some requirements from our funding that people have to have their own kitchen and it has to be like an individual lease and So there's some funding requirements that we would have to adhere to, but I think in short, like, yes, it's possible. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I also forgot to mention that our CDBG contract was extended until the end of September. So thank you for making that happen, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Heather Simmons, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Colleen, I wanted to express interest in also helping with additional conversations or whatever needs to happen moving forward. But also I'm wondering for staff, do we need to extend further on this? If this funding has been extended through the end of next month, that doesn't seem helpful given the problem.
So staff have a lot of discretion once you all make the awards to sort of fulfill your policy intent, if that makes sense. So we have the ability within reason to make extensions, et cetera. At some point, if you all get nervous that funds aren't being spent, or if we're nervous that funds aren't being spent, we will bring that to your attention and vice versa. But that's part of the purpose in showing you the timeliness reports pretty regularly that Rachel has been doing, so that you can kind of track over time how things are going, if they're sort of repeat offenders in not spending. I think at this point, we don't have, and Rachel, please jump in if I am going way off the rails here, but when it's a sort of a specific known cause for a delay, I think that gives us a little bit more ability to work with folks to get that money expended. It's all for good purpose. We don't want to have to pull it back unless we really have to. And so it really is, I think at this point, still within our reason, and we will certainly let this committee know if we start getting nervous about expenditures and need you all to take action.
I will say the issue is the public services cap. So because it wasn't spent within that June 30th deadline, it forwards into our public services cap for this spending year. And that creates a problem with the other public service allocations that we created. And fortunately, we had some good program income in right at the tail end of the funding year in May and June. And that allowed us to extend Colleen and Fuse's contract a little bit longer. But once it starts to bump up against those other public service dollars that you've allocated for this program year, including to Fuse, then it becomes an issue.
Thank you for that, Rachel. And Lynn and Rachel.
Need a translation? Did you catch that? The mic was going out again, Rachel.
What I'd like to request is that before our next meeting, at a reasonable convenience to yourselves, could you send us a document, because I'm going to need to read it multiple times, a document noting what the impacts are. We're talking about them in general terms here, but if we could start to see some just range of magnitude impacts, I think that would allow this committee to make educated or more educated decisions on how to continue to move forward.
Certainly, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Colleen, thank you for the answers and for the information you brought. I absolutely, and obviously our entire committee is strongly in favor of the work you're doing. And it does sound like you have odd problems right now, such as people not charging you enough. Certainly not something any of us were expecting. So please keep us informed, keep staff informed, and we will continue to support the work in every reasonable way that we can.
Great, thank you so much. I know it's a really bizarre problem to have, given that I think the services funding is the biggest crux that we need to solve. So I think this is a unique situation. With that said, I just wanted to share briefly that the board and I both felt like our biggest concern was this funding going back to HUD. If it does end up being reallocated locally, that's great for us. Like, we're all in the work together. So we just want it to go to good use locally. But thank you so much to this committee, and I really appreciate the support. We'll keep working on it.
And Colleen, if there's any way for you to capture those in-kind or the services that you're getting that you're not having to pay for, I think that would be really critical for this committee to see in your next funding application, which will be in like 2 months. So just putting that out there.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Well, we are at the end of the agenda and we are very close to time. Are there other motions or suggestions for business from this committee before we adjourn? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone. Stay
Thank you.
healthy.
Thanks.